Hey y'all, you're listening to Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies, the DSM podcast. We help make mental health more comfortable by using Black movies and shows we know and love and culture to remove stigma. So join our convo with your host, Courtney Copeland, licensed mental health counselor.
And Dr. B, licensed professional counselor.
What's up, y'all? This episode, we are talking about the 1994 hood classic, Above the Rim, starring Tupac, Dwayne Martin, Marlon Wayans, Bernie Mac, Leon, Wood Harris, a bunch of other people too, but these are the ones that we know and love. And of course, because Dwayne Martin is in the movie, we know it's all about basketball. We'll get into that a little bit more, but first, let's get into these quotes. Dr. Rosie B, what you got?
Please tell me you have all of Bernie Mac's quotables, because he had some of the best.
I have none of them, actually.
I think one of my favorite ones is
what you looking for, some dick?
And I feel like there were so many more that were like, really, Bernie? I feel like he didn't even have a line for it. He just came up with it. That's neither here nor there.
I feel like probably Bernie's movies, most of the time, they're just like, hey, Bernie, go ahead, do what you feel like.
Right. He's such an icon. He's definitely missed for sure. And it's so weird watching movies and shows with him in it, because then it's like, man, he's really gone.
I feel that shows and movies with nostalgia, we're always, unfortunately, going to have to be like, oh, this person isn't here anymore. Oh, this person just passed. So I guess it's kind of a way of giving these people their flowers, because each episode, I feel like we're like, oh, rest in peace, this is great, but they deserve it.
They do, for sure. And of course, we have another legend, an icon, Tupac. Tupac Shakur is in this. I've read some of the commentary about the movie, and they say that he pretty much stole the entire movie. Would you agree or disagree?
I read one that said, if Tupac wasn't in this movie, it wouldn't be a classic.
Ooh.
It's like, sheesh, harsh.
I would have to agree. I mean, seriously. And, well, yes, I would have to agree. And then on top of that, I mean, he pretty much made the movie. His acting was probably better. Leon might have been a little more into his acting career, but still, I even think that his acting was a little better than Leon's. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed. I have no rebuttal to that. Yes.
Okay.
Agreed. My only quotable from this movie, I don't know why, it's just the only thing that's ever really stuck out to me. There's things that stick out, but they more so relate to the characters and explain my diagnosis and things. But just from this movie, I like when the waitress that's trying to holler at Shep and the mom come in and she's like, don't waste your time, sis. It may look sweet, but it's gone sour.
Okay, she sized him up real quick, get your ass out of here. She was so thirsty for him. I think Boogaloo, Marlon.
So Marlon and Tupac have an interview, and Tupac basically laughed at Marlon. It was like, my name is Marlon Wayans, and I'll be playing the role of Boogaloo. And they were both laughing and what are they calling each other now these days? That's Boogaloo, that's it.
Right. It's so weird, a Boogaloo. What kind of name is that? But he was a booger, for sure.
No.
He was a cute booger. It was hilarious. But I think he just always brought that comedic relief. I think in most of his movies, that's the case. And when he called him out about his penis not being circumcised and saying it looks like an anteater, or just him,
it's so big. Would you lift weights with your thing?
He's so childish. And he was like, they was washing their laundry on these abs when he was in jail. So I don't know. He's definitely a booger, but he had some of the best quotes too. What do you got?
So I just have well, actually a couple questions. My first one is, so was this film just a clever tool used by Coach John Thompson to recruit more Allen Iverson-esque players from the hood to Georgetown to play for him? Like, I don't know. Y'all tell me. I mean, what better recruitment strategy is there than to make a hood classic movie where the star player is striving to only go to your school? But, you know, that's neither here nor there.
Right. It was a plug. It was definitely a plug, for sure.
Clever recruiting strategy. But more importantly, my next question is, what the hell are boonks? Like, what type of homoerotic repressed activity is happening here? Like,
explain what happened.
Like, you see them assume the position that they grab the fence and stick their butt out like, oh. And apparently it's like the other person throwing the ball as hard as they can at them, at their butt. But like, who thought of that? And who decided it should be called boonks?
Because that's the sound it make when the ball hits your butt. Boonks. It does. It does sound like that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's great rationale.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even pick up on it, but I remember him grabbing the fence. Oh my God.
Assuming the position. Oh, anywho.
Weird.
I appreciated them having Legend in 2 games, Pee Wee Kirkland, to help give the movie even more street cred than it already had with all of the great characters that are in it, which was funny to me though. Like, they're making this super like East Coast movie, but then the soundtrack was by Death Row Records, and so it's all West Coast artists. I figured Pac just wrote that into his contract, but it's just hilarious.
I feel like he did, because the whole soundtrack was him. Or like one of the major songs was his song, which actually you can't find that song on any streaming platform, by the way. You can find it on YouTube, I believe, like as like a little clip or something, but that's about it. It's not.
I liked how they put that song throughout the entire movie, like every other scene. They said this song is going to pop.
Yes, and it did. I feel like it was a really popular song. It is a nice song too. Listen to the words, but it's interesting because Q-Tip was in Poetic Justice, and that was supposed to be West Coast, and here he comes with his super New York ass in that movie, and then here comes Tupac with his super West Coast ass, and this
he was just becoming West Coast at that particular time. That's when he signed to Death Row, because he's definitely born on the East Coast, definitely raised on the East Coast. It then made his way to the West Coast. But
representing.
Yes, this is when he just first started. Like, if you look at the interviews and different things, especially for like the soundtrack release party and all of that, this is just when he first started like really letting that anger out towards the media and fussing at people in interviews. This is about the time when that was starting. Unfortunately, this is like things with him going to jail while they're shooting, like all of those things happening made production a little bit difficult, but a great movie nonetheless. I appreciate it. And it's a great basketball movie, I think, most importantly. And I think a great quote that I got from Marlon was during one of his interviews. He was really talking about how the basketball is the action to this film, like guns are to Die Hard. And I was like, that's a great way of looking at that, Marlon. I had never thought about it like that. I think that's really awesome. Like, basketball is the action in the film.
I thought it was also interesting to see how gangs or mobs kind of get themselves affiliated or tied to players within certain sports, for betting and gambling reasons. And so, and I mean, you see that a lot within boxing, especially, the mob was having people, be like, oh yeah, just don't fight. And niggas getting knocked out in the first round just so they could win. So I think this is a perfect depiction of, people, taking advantage of athletes. I think that's four things. Athletes are just so misused and misunderstood, and it's like they need more advocates. I'm so happy your work is going to be with working with athletes, because they need it. I hope that's
do what I can.
I was like, did I misinterpret your goal?
It's in there somewhere, but No, definitely. And the long history of like Rucker Park and those type games where basically the local, whoever the man is going to sponsor a team, and then those teams are going to battle it out, but they're competing on so many levels of who has the best players, whose team going to have the best shoes, who going to have the best uniforms. And I feel like we saw that in very indirect ways in this film. So I just appreciate the film for being really rooted in actual real experiences, despite the theatricality of it, the dramatization of it, the like, we couldn't get one father in the whole film. Couldn't nobody have a daddy? I mean, my goodness, I feel like this whole movie would have been an episode or like a commercial length if we just could have had some fathers inserted in there. They could have taught their sons how men process their experiences and thoughts and emotions in healthy masculine ways. And we wouldn't even have a whole film. But
well, I feel like that's what in an odd way, Flip was trying to do. In some odd way, he was like the unwanted uncle on the street. And then, I mean, Shepard, I feel like Shepard was trying to do that in some ways, but he was having to deal with his own demons and his own issues, that he wasn't anybody's father figure or role model, honestly. So, yeah, I guess you're right. There was no father figure or any father type. I feel like it plays into that trope of like Black families not having fathers, but that's also kind of true at the same time.
It's a conspiracy by the man to destroy the nuclear family system of Black people. But that's something that I could get into and have a whole nother podcast on. So while we're here, let's just go ahead and talk these diagnoses. So what did you diagnose for Thomas Shepard?
Thomas Shepard is definitely post-traumatic stress disorder. You could see that within his mannerisms when interacting with people, especially the waitress. He had no interest, okay, and there was no conversation. But even with Coach Rollins, he was just very not wanting to have those interactions. But as far as like looking at the criteria, of course, he meets it with criteria A, exposure to actual or threatened death. So, of course, seeing an unfortunate death of his friend while playing basketball, the thing that he loved the most. And then, let's see. Yeah, and then the reoccurrence, intrusive, distressing memories. So you see that within that first clip of the movie with him having that nightmare and then waking up to his friend's death. Could you remind me of his friend's name? I can't remember.
Again, with these names. His name was Nutso. Like, where did they come up with these names? But Nutso, like, was there a Nutso in your hood? Because I didn't have a Nutso.
So what did you have?
No, I definitely and completely agree with you with Shep for post-traumatic stress disorder. I feel like, honestly, from all of the diagnoses that we've made of PTSD so far, this is the fullest depiction because we do get the intrusive thoughts. We get the memories, we get the flashbacks, we get the dreams, like we get all of that in this film. So I feel like this is one of the best representations of post-traumatic stress that we have seen. Again, with the criteria, you talked about the distressing memories. He has the distressing dreams, waking up in cold sweats, the reactions, the flashbacks in which the individual feels or acts as if the traumatic event was occurring. So he's full on, like Boogaloo said, he playing ball without a ball and really in the part going through the motions and everything. Intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure, as well as he had a couple other of the avoidance or efforts to avoid external reminders that aroused the distressing memory. So like he had just skipped town and nobody knew where he was and what was going on for however long that it was. Persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs, as well as negative emotional state. He had a lot of like guilt and shame over everything that happened, which I don't feel was just because who plays basketball on the roof and with the hoop on the edge of the roof. It sounds irresponsible to me.
That was actually something that they pointed out as like a blooper or like a goof, if you will, on IMDb or DBM. Well, okay, yeah, that was.
You were right the first time.
So I shouldn't have second-guessed myself. So they were talking. I don't know. It's right in front of me. So they said that at one point when you look at it and they're playing, there's clearly a wall with a glass window. Mm-hmm. But then when he actually falls, there's no window, there's no wall.
So I was wondering, like, is it just like perception is off? And so like a couple feet ahead, there was a window with a wall, but there was the in between the buildings right there. I was just confused. Either way, It was irresponsible. Even if you're playing in front of a window with a wall, who plays basketball in front of a window with a wall for you to break one of the windows? Either way.
That close. Yeah.
Irresponsible. He also had feelings of detachment and estrangement from others. He definitely experienced that with Birdie. And then we have hypervigilance, him being on edge and kind of keyed up and watching everything that's going on, which is how he was able to save Kyle. And I guess that's a good thing for you to have if you're going to be a security guard. I don't know, but I don't need you having flashbacks while you're trying to keep us safe. There's the exaggerated startled response, which we see in the diner when the mom kind of taps him on the shoulder and he freaks out a little bit and scares the hell out of her. Right. And then, of course, the sleep disturbances like we talked about earlier. If Shep was my client, one thing that I would have liked to see happen, though, is somebody assess for suicidal ideation because of like everything else that's going on, but then also the losing of his mother as another loss and him saying he's just back to bury his mother and things like that. And so I would, just because I don't feel like we assess for suicidal ideation enough in Black males, that is something I would like to see happen. And then he says like a couple of things that kind of are red flags that he is struggling with PTSD, where I think like Coach Rollins asked him something like, where your head at, or where's your mind at, something like that. And he's like, nowhere, it's stuck. It's the rest of me that does the running. And then just felt bad for Shep. And everybody blamed him, but I was like, oh, he's struggling. He's still that little kid. Somebody help him.
Yeah. He's stuck there. It's like he's stuck in that place, in that time, and he's having a really hard time finding himself outside of that.
Yep. And so I was glad that he was able to, though, try to at least start building some type of relationship, whether it goes on or not, just companionship, even more so with Kyle's mom. I think her name was Malika. I'm not sure. But but I was glad to see him like start to engage with another individual and smile and joke and be able to carry on full conversations. And he's present in the here and now moment, which is something that you want to try to get people who are struggling with PTSD to come back to and focus on what's going on in the here and now, especially if they are having those flashbacks, those hallucinations, putting themselves back in the past, getting them to focus on here and now and that they are safe in this moment.
Yeah. So with your role of being like his therapist, what would you recommend for him if he says, okay, I am going to take on this position as the coach for the basketball team? Would that be something that would be a hindrance to his treatment, or do you think that would be helpful?
To me, I think it would be helpful because when Kyle says like, I owe you.
I lost, I owe you. You owe me. That's right, I owe you. You hear that, nutso? The boy here says he owes me. He owes me.
I think that that would be his way of paying back what he feels like he owes to Nutso. And so him pouring in all of that positive energy, that experience, that knowledge, that passion for basketball into future generations, I think that would give him a positive correlation with basketball and try to alleviate some of the negative experience that he has with basketball. Like he wasn't playing aside from reenacting because he has that negative association with basketball now. And I think him having a more positive one would help push him a little bit further. But with him having PTSD and him putting up those avoidant behaviors and all of those different things, it sounds like Birdie took his leaving very, very hard, very, very personal. And I'm kind of concerned about what was going on with their mom, why she was feeling like he was supposed to have taken care of them. Like when Birdie saying to him, like mom was like, oh, Shep. She really thought she was coming back to save us. Like, he's the child. It's not his responsibility to save y'all. It was not his responsibility to be the breadwinner for y'all house. Like, yes, y'all had aspirations of him going pro and things like that. But again, like, him taking care of y'all is not his responsibility because y'all not his kids. Now, if as a family, he feels a sense of responsibility and wants to do for y'all, okay. But y'all being poor is not Shep's fault. And if your mom checked out when Shep left, again, that's not Shep's fault. And so I was kind of like, I wonder if Birdie, because they didn't have, I don't know what the relationship would have, could have, is with the, whatever father that they did have. I wonder if Birdie looked at Shep as that father figure. And so being abandoned by a father and then being abandoned by Shep, and which leads me to why I diagnosed him with borderline personality disorder, because of those fears of not wanting to be abandoned.
I see. It's interesting you say, okay, so we're both in the same area with Birdie as far as a personality disorder, because I gave him paranoid personality disorder because I felt like because of his life, because he had to go into this street life, he had this distrust and suspicion of everyone and their motives. And you could see that with, him, with Kyle talking and kind of finding more out about his relationship to Shepard through Flip and him getting upset about it and denying that, they're like pretty much he's not related to him, and then preoccupied with unjustified doubts about the loyalty and trustworthiness of friends or associates. So you see that definitely with even his own brother, reluctant to confide in others, of unwarranted fear that information will be maliciously. Y'all, I just made up my own word.
Did you just say miraculously?
Miraculously. Mm-hmm. Maliciously used against him or her. And then criteria B does not occur exclusively during the course of schizophrenia. See, now that's where I should have probably read a little further. Well, I mean, it's not, I don't think he's like he has bipolar disorder or depressive disorders with psychotic features. Yeah, so I think that does fit. I don't know. Maybe I'm pushing it on there, but I do like your personality disorder as well.
So the criteria for borderline personality is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment, like how we talked about earlier. A pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. And I feel like we see that first with Kyle, where he's building Kyle up and trying to get him into his team. Birdie is a good coach, if nothing else. That man is a master recruiter. He got him in there, got him a girl, got him, was, satisfying all of his vices. And then later on, it's like, I don't care what jersey you wear, you're still playing for me. And kind of, trying to tear him down. And then we also see that with his interaction with Shep, where as soon as they're in the graveyard and he sees him, he looks at him, he gives him a hug, and he's like, we can be partners and all of those things. And then soon as Shep is like, I'm not on the same thing that you're on, like, I'm not about to be selling that shit. Are you dumb? And then he's like, you ain't the man no more. I'm the one. And then he goes into his whole thing about don't get caught up and all of that. And so it's the back and forth with those extremes of idealization and then devaluation. Impulsivity in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging. I felt that could potentially be the selling drugs and murder. I feel like murder is a little, and it was impulsive. So those are the two. And then affective instability due to marked reactivity of mood, being irritable. And we see some of the, like you were saying with the paranoia, a little bit of the anxiety and the worry and trying to think ahead of other people. And the chronic feelings of emptiness. And that's something where Boogaloo, I have to stop trying to call him Marlon. Boogaloo was like, I think that, no, not Booger. He said, I think Birdie, he liked winning more than he liked money and pussy. Like, he jerk off to winning. And I think that him doing that and presenting himself as bigger than others and all all of those other things was because he was battling feelings of emptiness within himself. And so if he could be the best, or if he could be a winner, then that would suffice and fulfill that emptiness that he was feeling on the inside. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. I mean, he murdered Flip. So like, there's that. And we also get that transient stress related paranoid ideation that you talked about a little bit earlier. And so with that being included here, I think that borderline personality was a good fit. And then like when you go through some of the diagnostic features of it, it talks about how they are easily bored, and those who have borderline personality disorder might constantly seek something to do and might frequently express inappropriate, intense anger, have difficulty controlling their anger, display extreme sarcasm and verbal outbursts. Like when he was like, is this a joke? Is this a fucking joke? And then he pushed Boogaloo on the floor and everything. And that anger is often also elicited when a caregiver or lover is seen as neglectful, withholding, uncaring, or abandoning. And so he orders Motal to kill Kai, or not kill him, we'll shoot him. We don't, whatevs. He tells him, handle your business, after Shep joins the other team and helps them win the shootout. And so that could have been the final straw of that feeling of abandonment, to where he then orders somebody to kill somebody. So yeah, I feel like that was a lot.
I mean, yeah, you definitely gave a lot of examples and explanation as to why borderline would fit that particular character's mental health. Okay. I mean, I'm still holding on to paranoid.
You do that. So then that's my biggest question is, how would you treat paranoid with personality disorder with somebody like Birdie, where some of that paranoia is necessary for him to survive and be successful in the industry that he is in? And so you don't want to take too much of that away, because that could mean him being murdered. But like, how do you get to a place where you have a healthy level of it with someone where it's serving them in the area that they're in?
You know, honestly, I think the only thing, or not only thing, but the best treatment for like personality disorders, usually CBT, I feel, you know, because you're still having to deal with the cognitive and the behavioral aspects of it. And so, you know, a lot of that is distorted thinking, or, you know, this kind of idea that, you know, whatever perception or reality that they have is what actual reality is. So then you're having to kind of break down their thought processes. And then the behavioral part, I feel, would probably be a little harder, especially depending on what the behavior is. And it seems like for him, it would be murder.
Yeah, let's just work on our biggest treatment goal is to get you to stop murdering people. Let's start there. Harm reduction.
Yes. So, I think that is probably where I would start. I would definitely just like go CBT all the way. I wouldn't even try to pull in any other psychotherapy working with that population, because it's just not. I feel like they're just gonna fuck with you, like, you know, especially because they know how to manipulate situations and people to get what they want. Especially if they feel like, oh, you understand me. Oh, you think you got one over on me, and that's when they turn something on you. They either shut down or don't want to come. They ghost you. So yeah, CBT all the way. How would you work with this population?
Well, I do think that CBT would be a good way to go, and I think that it would be a lot of that safety planning, allowing them to choose those first like initial goals that we work on in treatment and things like that. Especially like if I'm operating with, I'm diagnosing him with with borderline. My borderline clients are always just a special kind of joy and pleasure, because like you said, with that manipulation and trying to basically like suck you into that world of crazy that they live inside of in their head. And so trying to do that intricate dance would be very, I'd earn my money during session. But with Birdie's prognosis of him being dead, I don't think he would be my client.
True that. Because Boogaloo Booger shot him dead.
Calling him Booger.
He was such a booger. I'm sorry.
Well, then let's get into Boogaloo. Did you have a diagnosis for Boogaloo?
No, not from the DSM, other than he was hella annoying.
I loved him. I thought he was a great friend. I did feel that. Go ahead.
I think my favorite thing about him was like he gave no fucks about what anybody had to say and did what he wanted to do, especially when he came out into that court with that all gold sweatsuit.
Kyle said you look like a 24 karat Urkel.
You my man in the whole 9, but you look like a 14 karat Urkel.
Yeah, put that damn chalk on his hands.
I need more powder. I need more powder.
No, you don't. You need to sit down.
Grip, baby. All about grip.
But anyway, what's your diagnosis for Booger?
For Boogaloo, most importantly, I did feel like he was struggling with Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. I felt like he was struggling with that identity versus role confusion, which does happen in adolescence. And the person is basically trying to answer the question of who am I and where am I going? And teens need to develop a sense of self and personal identity, where if they are successful with that leads to an ability to stay true to themselves, where failure of doing that leads to confusion and a weak sense of self. And I feel like that is kind of what we were seeing with him coming up there looking like a 24 karat Urkel. I feel like he was trying to... Kyle was successful and Kyle had a plan. And so he just came home from juvie, whatever, or jail, whichever one he was in, and was like, okay, well, then I'll do what Kyle is doing. But he's not a baller. He doesn't have the skill that Kyle has. And then even at the end, when he does shoot Birdie, it feels like, well, then is he taking on what he sees Mota and Birdie doing by being gangster? And so you're going to shoot him? Like, it still feels like we in the movie without him finding his true self. We don't get a whole lot of backstory on Boogaloo. And so I did find it hard to diagnose him. And so I just kind of am thinking about possibly an unspecified anxiety disorder because of the thoughts of worry and things that he had, while some of them were justified. Some of the other things, more so was him just struggling with the stages of development that he was going through. But yeah, he needed whole movie. If we had some fathers, would have been a whole different film.
I mean, it's so true. Well, and see, I agree that he is going through certain issues with that identity and as far as his developmental processing. However, like you said, I also agree that we don't have enough information. I think what was surprising, and I think this is like common or maybe something that everyone felt when they saw it, when you realize who shoots or who shot Birdie and it being him, because he was such a light person, a happy-go-lucky type of person throughout the movie. And for us to see him shoot him, it's like, oh, that's why he was in jail. Okay. You know, like, he's not one to be fucked with. You know, it's like that feeling of like, nice people, and you can push them, but so far type thing. And he was nice. I think he kind of like admired Birdie in some ways, and just wanted to be accepted. And I think the last straw for him, I think it was when he hit, like, he pushed him, didn't he?
Pushed him on the floor.
Pushed him on the floor.
Everybody laughed at him. Yeah.
And I think that was a moment for him where he was like, yeah, I'm going to get mine. I think he made.
I don't think he had it in that moment though, because when they go downstairs and Kyle is talking to him, you got to stand up for yourself, and he's like, "Yo, like do you know what he did to Flip? Like, what you think he gonna do to me? Like he did to that to him for no reason. What you think he'll do to me?" And so I think in that moment there was still the fear that had him leave out the door, but I think after like him seeing Mo ordered to shoot Kyle, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, oh nigga, you just can't be stopped.
yeah, that's true. And then I think to your point too, like as far as Erickson's theory, of course it has its limitations, and I think it can be applied in this sense, but also has its limitations to culture too, like the social expectations. So was it expected for him to have his own sense of self when he was constantly within a system, especially when he's in jail? Like, how do you have a sense of self if you're having to go outside when everybody else goes outside, eat when everybody else eat, and then you have to find ways to protect yourself. So you're likely to go and do what other people are doing to make sure that you don't get raped or beat up.
That escalated very quickly. I didn't think that you were going there. But to, I guess, stick with the theory is that if you are able to move through that stage successfully, then regardless of the circumstances that you are put in, you have a better ability to stay true to yourself. And so regardless of, you are like you said, within a system and they're telling you when to do, what to do and how to do it, you are able to have a certain peace of mind about yourself. And I think he wasn't able to develop that. And he might not been able to develop that because he was in a system. It might have took away his opportunity to explore and really figure out what he wanted his identity to look like and what his sense of self was. I think that definitely had an influence on his ability to do that. But definitely since he didn't develop that, he just out here kind of flapping in the wind until he figures and solidifies what his identity is. And once you have a body, especially once you have a body that young, usually the prognosis isn't that great because, then that becomes, you get stuck in that cycle and other things like happen, and retaliation, and other people want to do things to you because of the things that you've done and, all of that. But where was their school counselor? Well, Boogaloo wasn't in school. He had just got out of juvie. So
yeah. It
didn't matter. So, he won't go and see a school counselor no how. Poor thing.
Is it bad for me to say that his identity and role was to be a killer all along?
It's not bad. I just didn't see him as a killer. Like, he was going in for petty stuff from like what we gathered from the film at the beginning. And so him, just doing, little stuff here and there to get by. Yes, I saw that. I was surprised that he was the one, like when the first time I saw this, I was surprised that he was the one that ended up killing Birdie. Like, I could see it because the male ego is so fragile and you embarrass me in front of a whole bunch of people. I have to do something to garner that level of respect back. And so I get it. But just the character that he was, I didn't see it. And so I would, of course, there's no part 2 or anything, but prognosis wise, it would be interesting to see where Boogaloo went after that.
Because it also seems as if he might have aged out of juvie as well. So he's actually going to be charged as an adult and likely to serve a life sentence. That is the prognosis for Boogaloo. Booger.
I hate that you keep calling him that. It's hurting my feelings.
I think booger is such a word of endearment. Look at you don't. Booger.
No, you don't.
Look at you, booger.
Don't you ever call me a booger.
Hey, booger. All right, so who we got next?
I know I'm depressed thinking about how the system has done its job in failing the life of Boogaloo and never giving him a chance from the start. But I guess we could keep going.
I know. Well, let's talk about his bestie, Kyle.
Okay. We do see that Kyle eventually does make it into Georgetown and wins a game and all of that good stuff. And so it wraps up the movie on a positive note. But I diagnosed Kyle with Kyle Watson with adjustment disorder, with anxiety and disturbance of conduct. It did seem like he was struggling with feeling that he should have already gotten the acceptance from Georgetown and waiting for that to come in, and that basically what that transition would look like from him playing high school ball into then collegiate ball, and all the stress of that upcoming that anticipatory stress of those things all coming into fruition. And so with adjustment disorder, some of the criteria that exists for that is the development of emotional or behavioral symptoms in response to an identifiable stressor. The symptoms or behaviors are significant as evidenced by marked distress that is out of proportion of the severity of or intensity of the stressor, taking into account the external context, and significant impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. Yes, and once the stressor or its consequences have terminated, the symptoms do not persist for more than an additional 6 months. And so it really just seemed like he was struggling with that transition phase. And again, if he had a father, unfortunately his father passed, but if he had a man in his life that was willing to be able to walk him through that transition and build a stronger foundation with him on how to process certain things, so that once all of that change was coming at him, it didn't freak him out the way that it did. And I felt like Coach Rollins could have done a better job at preparing him for that transition, but I feel like Coach Rollins was going through a job burnout. He's at the end of his career and feeling like he's just waiting on retirement. And so I think he wanted Shep to take on that role for him, because he realized that he couldn't do it because he just didn't have it to give anymore in that role as a coach. And so he was trying to get Shep to do it. Shep didn't want to do it at first. And so Kyle was struggling until Shep was able to come in and really help him out.
So for me, I gave him narcissistic personality disorder.
She's not even 18. He can't qualify.
Well, I mean, he meets a lot of the diagnostic criteria. There's more. Just kidding. Okay, so he clearly has a grandiose sense of self-importance. Okay, he exaggerated his accomplishments as to why he's not getting talked to by Georgetown's actual recruitment. And he even went as far as to talk to them himself, which he knows is against the rules, and is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, right? So he sees himself as this big-time college player. He believes that he's special and unique, and he requires excessive admiration. He always wanted the ball. Like he wanted to have the spotlight on him because, again, the recruiters are here. I need for them to see how I can play. How am I going to be able to show them I can play if I'm on the bench? And he has a huge sense of entitlement because of that, and feels that because he is a better basketball player, that he should have favorable treatment, or he doesn't have to comply with other expectations because of who he is and how he plays. The other criteria would be interpersonally exploitive, so takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. And so I felt like in some ways he was exploitive in a way that he was willing to accept Birdie's offer just so that he can, when Birdie offered him like money and things like that, I think he took advantage of that, in my opinion, because of this personality trait. I wouldn't say that he lacks empathy, but in some ways I feel like he didn't allow, and I think this might be the case for teenage boys who have a single mother, where they become very territorial. And it's like he didn't empathize with the fact that, yes, she's a woman, that she has needs and she wants to date. But that might just be the kind of expectation for men or boys whose mothers are dating as well. Yes, so you needed 5 criteria. I gave you about 7. And the only reason why he wouldn't necessarily be diagnosed with this, as you mentioned, Courtney, is because he is, 17? Maybe.
And 3 of them things was weak. He is unique or special. He believes it because it's true. He got the whole hood on his back. He got to be the one to make it.
And that's exactly how narcissists are bred.
That's cultural pressure. You're not taking into consideration his culture. But the things that I do agree, I felt like also could be explained with the disturbance of conduct with the other disorder, and separation anxiety is one of the things that can become present with the disturbance of conduct as it relates to adjustment disorder as well. So to me, some of those was explained other places. But yeah, I definitely didn't see the lax empathy. And I felt that we saw the real him come out as we got further into the movie, and when it was time for him to try to stand up for or tell Boogaloo that he needed to stand up for himself. We saw that when he came to Coach and says, "No, Coach, I want to run with you," and then we see him passing Shep the ball, like we see him being more of a team player, because that game doesn't impact his recruiting status. So we get to see a different, we get to see him in a different light, which seemed less narcissistic, as you had coined. And because of that, that's why I kind of was leaning less towards the personality disorder, and more that it's the stressors that are impacting him and disturbing his behavior and anxiety levels.
So what was his stressor that caused him to harass and beat up on Flip?
That's the disturbance in behavior. Really, I think that is partially just because he's a sucker, because when it was an unfair fight and it was him and Boogaloo and just Flip, and Flip is a homeless man who's messing with him, beating up on him. Soon as Shep came, he stopped. He ain't want no problems with Shep. I think that was less of more diagnosis and more of just him being a sucker.
All right. Well, I guess.
Did you have a diagnosis for Mo?
No, I didn't. I just was like, I just don't want to cross his path.
Yeah.
You talk about what's his name? Motown?
Mm-hmm.
Lord, no. He scared me. I was like, oh. I loved him and Paid in Full. I was like, damn, where's that version of him? He was so nice and Paid in Full. But no, I didn't have anything for Motown. He's just crazy. What you have?
So I diagnosed him. Well, we don't know his age, and so I was kind of back and forth on where to go with that. And so if he is under 18, then I would kind of look more towards a disruptive, impulse control and conduct disorder. But if he's over 18, child, he's looked 30 since, this is his first movie role. This is his first movie role ever. He's looked 30. He looked 30 then. He looked 30 in The Wire. He looked 30 in Paid in Full. But he looks 30 now. It's just he has been 30 forever. And so I have no idea how old he is supposed to be, was, isn't. So I'm just, covering all bases. So if he's under 18, I'm going to go with some type of disruptive impulse control and conduct disorder. If he's over 18, I'm going to say antisocial personality disorder. And the criteria that I felt like he fit with, which I did go through and make sure that he fit there, because I do, again, agree with you. He looks over 18. So the criteria that I felt like he met there was the failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. He did several things that could get him arrested and eventually did get shot by the police at the end of the movie. And if he did survive, then he probably is under arrest to this day.
Indeed.
Also, the impulsivity and failure to plan ahead, the irritability and aggressiveness as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults, and the reckless disregard for safety of self or others. That man shot into a crowded park.
He did, didn't he?
Yes.
I was like, and then I was like, why would they call this game a shootout? Why would you? And then here he comes shooting
guns to the park. But and then also the lack of remorse as indicated by being indifferent or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated another. And so while, yes, if your corner boys don't have your money, you do need to set an example. By all means, you have to do what you have to do to get your money. However, once he did beat the hell out of those two men on the corner for not having the money that they were supposed to have, he kind of smirked like he enjoyed it. And so that made me feel like, oh, like you don't feel bad, or like you don't see that was problematic. Like that didn't affect you in any type of negative way. You kind of liked it. And he got in the car and was like beating his chest.
Did you motherfuckers see that? I'm a motherfucking soldier, you know what I'm saying? I drive.
And all of those things. And so I just felt that it was so accurate and spot on when Boogaloo then looked at him and said,
I think you need a role model. Or a hug or something.
Okay. That's why I was so disappointed in Boogaloo when I saw he pulled that trigger. I was like, you the one that's talking about him needing a role model. But I do agree. I agree. Yes, with those especially. And then didn't Birdie have to pull him back once when he was about to go after Flip? He was about to go after. I think he did. And when he was in that park, most of the scenes have been happening in the park. But Birdie confronted Flip, and he was with him. Motal was with him, and he was like, "Nah." You know, and then he kind of addressed it with Flip. So, yeah, I agree. Antisocial. So, what's your prognosis?
He did, girl. No, either he got shot by the police and he died, because he did get shot twice by that one police officer in plain clothes, because, you know, they got to have the undercover people. It's a whole park full of games. They had to have the undercover people.
They had to have an undercover at a game called the Shootout.
Neither here nor there. But he shot him twice. So if he didn't die, then I'm sure he is still in police custody to this day. And so the prognosis would be either none or terrible. But aside from him, I did not diagnose Flip. I just listed that as other concerns with his homelessness, because there was mention of where Kyle is like, oh, he not gone. He probably just out here getting high or something. And I didn't want to take that as evidence of him using, because that could have just been a stereotypical biased comment that Kyle was just throwing out there because they didn't have much respect for Flip. Like he was, even Boogaloo said, you playing one on bum. This is hilarious. So I felt since they had so many negative stereotypes about homeless individuals who are homeless, that wasn't evidence of anything. So I didn't diagnose Flip with anything at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for the quote where he says, like, you know, they can't forget about us, or something like that.
They can't. They can't erase what we were.
Yeah, they can't erase what we were, and that stuck out for me too, because again, going back to that high school, college athlete, and how Flip ended out, you know, with him being this major, like, you know, athlete and this basketball star in high school. They can't erase that. But here you are now. And, you know, like, you know, there's like something that happens, like, you know, as far as like, you know, the emotional, mental part of them that is damaged because they didn't reach that high goal of becoming professional, you know, or doing something with themselves in a way that they felt like, you know, within sports. And I think that's common. And it's like they're admired and remembered for simply just being one of the best athletes, you know? So yeah, that stood out for me for him, but nothing really for Flip. I felt really bad for him. That's all.
They ain't had to do him like that. They ain't had to do my man Flip like that.
No. And then it was like Bernie Mac. So I was like, don't do him like that. Stop. Don't push him.
No, Pac, no. But shouts out to Malika, or as Kyle called her mom, for being the most healthy, well-adjusted woman in the entire film. Appreciating her, holding it down, continuing to live her life and keep things moving despite the loss of her former husband, Kyle's father. I just like when she tells Kyle, sit your 10-cent ass down. I said, dang, boy, only worth 10 cents. The crucial.
Only 10 cents. I remember 10 cent could buy you a little 10 cent piece of candy. Shoot, now everything a quarter. Or 50 cents. I'm over it. I hate going to a corner store now. Be like, damn, my whole dollar is gone. I used to get 10 pieces of candy with this. What happened? Give me a little pack of sunflower seeds for 10 cents. Rude.
Inflation. With all of that being said, I did think though that it was shiesty that he was developing whatever he was developing, that Shep was developing whatever he was developing with Malika, but then was still just about to dip and like not say nothing. And him seeing the two people playing basketball is what made him come and then like drop 30 in them thermals and them corduroys.
Bruh, I was like, I know that ass is hot, but okay.
Not even gonna take the thermal off, like
not even. Set the whole thing off for me. I was like, what time of year is this? What time of year? Okay, I'm confused. Whatever.
And he has on the thermal and corduroys.
Right. It was cold that morning. That's all I could say. It was cold that But I agree. I think what my issue is though with Monica, that's her name, right? Okay. I swear, I always butcher someone's name. Malika. I think it just kind of shows this thing that people have with Black women, just having to always be strong and to uphold the household. But I also was like, you better, girl, when he came, when Shep came to the door and she's like, no, I'm not doing this with you. Yep. You ran away.
You better set them boundaries, girl.
Okay. And then for you to realize like, oh, you definitely trash. Like you said, for him to come back for a game over coming back for the sake of being having a healthy relationship. You're trash. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care.
But in true Hollywood fashion, they end up together anyways at the end because
he saved her son.
I mean, if you take a bullet for my child, I feel like
you gonna give up the draws?
I feel like we could work this out. Like, we just need to establish what I will accept. Like, you can't just run away from me. I'm here for you. We're gonna work through it though. My last question is, what the hell was the refs doing? Was it no fouls called? All them elbows, all them knees, all the just punching people in the face?
Because they knew they was gonna get shot at the shootout. That's why.
Good point. You shouldn't sign up for that job now unless you can carry your own, and that's how you calling. Hey, look, I said
the ref got a gun.
I said
no, but then also I think Birdie might have also paid off the ref in order for them to do that.
Because Birdie, again, is a great coach. If he was nothing else, he might have been a terrible person and horrible in life, but the man knew how to get a team to victory.
Sure did. Okay.
With that being said, if you would like to support the show to help us get more content out to you all, you can visit our website and follow the Support the Show link to become a Patreon member or donate on our Cash App. Or more importantly, buy our merch. Now, we're happy to get the kind of money that jingles, but we would rather the kind that folds. As always, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the DSM Podcast, and you can subscribe to our show wherever you get podcasts. While you're there, go ahead and leave us a comment because we are counselors and actually care about what you have to say. So until next time, y'all. Peace.
Okay, bye.